So what you're hoping to do is to basically provide the entire context of this, the reality of these terrible times.
Right. Because if you don't know the history, and I think this is by design, what I'm saying now really transcends my particular topic and field of Islam. So, for example, trying to insist and prove that America is very racist, right? And then they'll talk about the slave trade, which is true. But then they won't tell you that, Europeans, 10 to 15 million, were actually enslaved by Muslims, many of them from Africa, okay? They don't want you to know that something like slavery, for example, was done by everyone. And if anything, probably white slavery of non-whites was, the least when it came to numbers. And they won't tell you that it was white Christians and missionaries who actually abolished slavery. Whereas it was still going on, for example, in the Islamic world. So I think history is a potent tool, and much is being done to just suppress it, make people ignorant of it, and then present a false history.
So let's go to the present now. What do things look like in the Middle East?
For
Christians?
Okay. They don't look good at all. There's actually been a rise in persecution around the world. So even nations that before were not engaged in this are, such as India. So, and a lot of it is tied up with religious nationalism, so Hindu nationalism in India. Apparently some Buddhists in Myanmar or Burma also are engaged in this. But like I said, the lion's share of it comes from the Islamic world. So if you look at the top 50 nations, as various human rights organizations have categorized them, I've counted them numbers, something like 38 to 40 will be Muslim nations out of the 50. And so right now, in certain nations in Nigeria, you have what's been categorized or defined as a genocide against Christians. And I follow that, as I was mentioning, I write that Gatestone report every month. And every month in Nigeria, dozens of Christians are massacred, not killed with hygienically with a bullet. I mean, they're just macheted to death, locked in their churches and burned alive, okay? And so that's just one nation in Nigeria, and that's not considered the worst. And but other nations, it's the government. In Iran, for example, it's not so much the people, the Shia Muslim population that's extreme. It's the Islamic Republic of Iran itself, which if they find Christians, they arrest them, they throw them in jail, and sometimes they disappear, they get killed in jail. So my point is, you have it from the terrorists, you have it from the governments, you have it from the populace, the masses. When they hear, for example, a church is being built for whatever reason, or even renovated, they riot, they attack, they burn the church, they kill. And one of the sadder things that I've been noticing is that Western elements not only don't acknowledge this, but almost aid and abet it. And I'll just give you one example. We know about the migrant crisis, of course, which really picked up in 2015. And you had millions of Muslims just go around Western nations, especially Europe. Supposedly the crisis was started by the Islamic State, which is a Sunni organization. So it's not going to attack or kill Sunni Muslims, okay? But what happened is something like 99% of the Muslims that went into Europe and that were accepted without even being vetted were Sunni Muslims who were portrayed as persecuted victims, including in the United States. And Christians who actually were, and Yazidis and all these, and even Shias who were being attacked were virtually like 0.01% of the people that Europe would take in, and America. And a lot of people thought, well, maybe that's just a coincidence or whatever. But more and more cases have been coming out where Germany will take in 1.5 million Muslims, and it most recently took in 10,000 Afghanis, and Afghans are the number one ranked most violent nation towards Christians, and they take them unvetted. But an Iranian man very recently, who's been in Germany and for asylum because he converted to Christianity, and he's being sent back to Iran to certainly punishment, possibly death. Okay, but that's not a singular anecdote. In the UK's United Kingdom's Home Office, which deals with migration, habitually they'll take in Muslims who are on record expressing their radicalization, and they'll allow them entry, and then they will involve themselves in terror crimes and kill people in England. And then the Christians, who are one every I don't know how many thousand, that's when they say, no, you can't come in because of whatever reason.
We've done quite a bit of coverage of this, what's the Christian persecution in Nigeria, for example. So I'm aware of this situation, but sort of in general, even among, human rights organizations, this topic isn't really front and center usually. Yeah.
No, it's not. To the left or to liberals, in as much as they like to talk about how they, care about the human rights of others, it almost seems like they want to protect any and everyone except a Christian, because a Christian seems too close to them, and they want to show you that, I'm not being tribalistic. I much prefer to go help, a Hindu or a Buddhist or anyone. But Christian just seems like, I'm picking my religion and I'm helping them. So I think that, ironically, puts Christians at the end of the barrel in many ways, and I've sensed that. It's this need to show I'm progressive. I'll help someone of a different background. That's definitely one of the reasons. But you're also seeing, you hear about the war on Christians in America, the war on Christmas, and all that sort of thing, which of course is nothing compared to what I'm discussing, which is out and out violence and prison terms and just terrorism. But it seems to me that there's, it's a slippery slope. And here in the West and in America, I was reading about all the, some women, Christian women who fled from Muslim countries and went to some European nation, and they were granted asylum. And now at work, they get fired because their little cross, for example, shows. And they just can't believe it. They're like, we fled from something, and we thought we were going to a country that can appreciate this, and it's not. It's almost like being in an Islamic country. So whether it's Islamic radicalization or extremism, or whether it's this militant leftism, Christians have quickly fallen out of favor, to put it mildly. You have to admit, there's a hatred for Christianity that's growing in the West, an animosity. This insistence on portraying it as, the root of all evil because it's the white man's religion, and he exploited it to do whatever. These tropes are very popular and embedded, not least because of Hollywood, but also academia. This is the sort of thing that's being taught.